Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Rose Bush. My name is Rose. This is the channel where growth happens one thorn at a time. Today, I am reacting to another TED Talk presented by Angela Lee Duckworth on grit, the power of passion and perseverance. So let's go ahead and get into it.
When I was 27 years old, I left a very demanding job in management consulting for a job that was even more demanding, teaching. I went to teach 7th graders math in the New York City public schools. And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests, I gave out homework assignments. When the work came back, I calculated grades. What struck me was that IQ was not the only difference between my best and my worst students. Some of my strongest performers did not have stratospheric IQ scores. Some of my smartest kids weren't doing so well. And that got me thinking. The kinds of things you need to learn in 7th grade math, sure, they're hard. Ratios, decimals, the area of a parallelogram. But these...
Yo, I don't even know. Do I use it? No, I don't. I don't use it. Not really.
concepts are not impossible. And I was firmly convinced that every one of my students could learn the material if they worked hard and long enough.
Okay, story time. When I was in my first year of community college, because I didn't do well in math all through school, I actually struggled through school. It's a long story. I have a learning disability. I was labeled with that, and I had special classes, and so all through school I struggled. The end. That's all that needs to be. But I had a professor who was a math teacher, and this particular math class was the class that you get put in when you don't have high enough SAT scores and things like that. So he was mean. He was not a nice man. He was very mean to me. And I mean, one of the days when he presented my test back to me was not a good grade. It was, I think, like a 62, which is a D, which is failing. And he presented it to me. He said, he put the paperwork back on my desk, and he said, "It looks like you're not doing too well in my class, so I guess I'll see you next semester." Yeah. That is not something you tell someone who's struggled to learn their whole life. And then on top of that, you tell them, listen, I'm not a math person. I just got good at it with practice. Cool, bro. That's cool for you. That is cool for you. But you know what? I don't learn the same way you do. So how about you just take that bias and knock it down? I ended up taking different math class with a different teacher at a different campus, and I did well. Because he actually took the time to explain things, and I felt comfortable actually raising my hand and asking, "Hey, I don't understand. Can you help me understand?" And this teacher would erase everything at the expense of all the other students. Keep in mind, this is college. We're paying to be there. He would wipe the whole board, and he would present it a different way. Those are the two differences between educators. From a teacher that tells you you don't have to be a math person to understand math, to a teacher that's actually giving you a different way and catering to you. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move on. I've talked enough.
After several more years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom, and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy.
Okay.
We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure, things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and it is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. So growth mindset is a great idea for building grit, but we need more. And that's where I'm going to end my remarks, because that's where we are. That's the work that stands before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
Well, that was certainly interesting. I would have loved for that particular presentation to be longer than it was, because I have questions. I have questions about her research and the testing that was done and how much they measured in these children, these students. Like, did they measure any brain activity? Did they take brain scans? Did they measure whether or not any of these students had learning disabilities, IEP programs, or have any neurodivergency? Because that contributes to how you learn and how you go about your day, is your brain itself, and how your brain itself actually works and functions and retains information and processes information. Because people that have ADD and ADHD specifically have trouble doing certain things, like taking care of themselves, doing laundry, feeding themselves, doing finances, completing tasks. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist. I don't have a degree in psychology, although I wish I did. So I am not the person to be labeling anyone, but those are major factors that, so when you're measuring children and students and determining grit and how they work, I feel like it's a disservice if you're not also measuring whether or not they have any limitations and that prevent them from learning like quote unquote normal people. And that's also something I was just talking to my partner about the other day, about how we need to step away from those labelings of normal and not normal or different, because that's just not how we need to be. It doesn't matter if you are quote unquote normal. You're a person, just be you. And with that, I want to thank you for joining me today on this lovely TED Talk. I appreciate you joining me and taking the time. If you're into it, please hit that subscribe button so that you can continue to grow with me and the channel. I would really love to see you here with me. So take care, and I will see you on the next one.